Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies, and in-betweeners. My name's Dan, and welcome back to another PAP Reports. It's Monday, June the 1st, 2020. Today we're starting with former Dorset Police Inspector. Get this, Billy Bullock. You can't make this up. Former Inspector Billy Bullock faced a misconduct hearing before the weekend after being accused of abusing his position for a sexual purpose. The gross misconduct hearing, chaired by Chief Constable James Vaughan, found that Billy Bullock has breached a number of professional behavioural standards after engaging in sexual activity with members of the public and members of the police force whilst on duty. It was also said that he pursued others for sexual activity whilst on duty and misled investigators. Deputy Chief Constable David Lewis said, "The case demonstrates that we will not hesitate to take action against the tiny minority of officers who fail to maintain the high standards that we set and fall below what is expected of them in terms of professional behaviour. The public expect and deserve to have trust and confidence in their police." Former Inspector Bullock let his colleagues and the public down by his conduct, which represented a fundamental betrayal of the public and the values for which the police service stands. Police officers serve to protect the public and are in significant positions of trust. While the vast majority of all members of Dorset Police are highly professional and dedicated, our counter-corruption unit will thoroughly investigate concerns in respect of any member of the organisation who is alleged to have failed to maintain the highest of standards and behaviour as demonstrated by this case. If you suspect a member of the force is abusing their position, for example, engaging in or pursuing an emotional or sexual relationship with a victim of crime or a witness, or contacting you or someone you know whilst off duty or via personal telephone numbers, then please report your concerns to Dorset Police. I can assure all of our communities that any such report of concern will be investigated to ensure the highest professional standards possible. Billy Bullock has been placed on the National Policing Barred List and would have been dismissed had he not already resigned. Metropolitan Police Detective Constable Deborah Mackerel of the Met's Central East Command Unit has been shown the door herself after being found to have engaged in behaviour that amounted to gross misconduct. Back in September 2019, she appeared at Inner London Crown Court, where jurors found her guilty by majority verdict of a charge of harassment after nearly 5 hours of deliberation. The harassment carried out was towards a fellow police constable from the firearms unit SO19 after their relationship had ended, and Mackerel decided to make over 1,600 anonymous phone calls to her ex, 53-year-old Paul Brewster, sometimes hundreds in a single day. She also made threats to tell superiors that he was mentally unfit to handle a gun to get him kicked out of the firearms unit. Mackerel from Milton Keynes was cleared of stalking him, claiming he kept talking to her because he loved the attention. 3 months later, in December 2019, Mackerel was spared jail and instead handed a restraining order, a 1-year conditional discharge, and banned from making any contact with Mr. Brewer until a further order. Due to her behaviour, a misconduct hearing was scheduled, which found she had breached police professional standards amounting to gross misconduct, and was shown the door. The government are worried that the public will start taking to mob justice due to huge backlogs in court cases. At the end of 2019, the backlog had already reached almost 37,500 cases, and due to coronavirus, that number has grown exponentially. Mr. Atkinson, co-chairman of the Law Society's Criminal Law Committee, said that with most proceedings halted, the lack of legal aid payments to solicitors firms and barristers meant many risked going out of business, and a shortage of experienced practitioners would further delay trials. He said, "If people get the idea, the general view that they will not get satisfaction from the legal process, then people will take things into their own hands. Mob justice will be taken up if people feel they can't get legitimate completion. It will be exploited by people who enjoy doing it." The Home Office's latest figures show 2018 to 19 that just 8% of reported crimes actually resulted in a charge or summons. In 2014 to 15, that was 15%. Mr. Atkinson said victims of crime face longer delays in future, and a lack of experienced defence lawyers could mean more innocent people being imprisoned. People's lives will be completely destroyed, he said, if they are found guilty of something they didn't do. The Lord Chief Justice for England and Wales, Lord Burnett of Malden, told the Commons Justice Committee last week that with a little bit of luck, by the end of June or thereabouts, all courts currently closed would reopen. A spokesperson for the National Police Chief Council added that, where it was appropriate, police would look to issue an out-of-court disposal, such as a caution or a penalty notice for less serious offences. Now, I find this personally a bit of an issue. The police are ultimately going to be making the judgment themselves whether someone's guilty or not without their legal right to a trial. Judging that someone should engage in restorative justice measures without actually being found guilty of an offence is completely against our human rights to a fair trial, and I would suggest would be far more likely to result in some kind of retaliation justice from those accused and found arbitrarily guilty of something. An interesting topic of debate. I mean, do you think the police should be making the call and imposing these sentences on people to help with the backlog? Understands that in very few cases there will be more than enough evidence, for example an admission of guilt, which could be dealt with by way of a restorative justice plan. But by giving an overarching power for police to make the decision for themselves is, in my opinion, a very bad idea. Let me know what you think below. The Test and Trace Service. We all know what it's about. But did you know that it appears that the obligatory data protection assessment into how the system will protect and store reams of personal information hasn't even been completed? Public Health England have allegedly confirmed to online outlet Politico that it had yet to complete the so-called data protection impact assessment, which is a mandatory requirement under UK law, before the system started on Thursday. The data protection assessment is mandatory under normal processes, would have been carried out and sent to the UK's privacy watchdog for review before being used. Ravi Naik, a data rights lawyer who has been critical of the government's contact tracing plans, said the failure to carry out the assessment before data collection had raised concerns that UK authorities had not fully addressed the potential privacy implications. It could also open up the contact tracing system to potential legal challenges. If they have deployed the system without considering those risks, that is a problem and may further undermine efforts to get people to take part in the system, he said, in reference to the UK government. Confidence and trust is key. Missteps like this will only lose public trust. Under GDPR rules, companies and government agencies can face fines of up to 4% of global annual revenue if they mishandle people's data. Privacy advocates have already raised concerns about how the government may use the personal information collected under its test and trace system. The related smartphone app, also aimed at tracing those who have been infected with COVID-19, was expected to be rolled out at the end of May, but has been delayed due to questions about its effectiveness. It certainly makes you wonder if any of this has actually been thought about properly. Oh, and if you're in Northern Ireland, be warned. First Minister Arlene Foster has said that Northern Ireland could have contact tracing for possibly up to 2 years. She said contact tracing was vital to make sure that we know where the virus is in our community. It's something that is forming the cornerstone of coming out of lockdown, she says, and being able to relax those regulations, which we understand are very draconian. Now, with restrictions being eased a little more this month, up in the 2-people rule to a 6-people rule, and with police whinging about how they're going to enforce it, it turns out that they needn't have worried after Downing Street said that police do not have the powers to enter gardens to check on the 6-person rule under the coronavirus legislation. It's funny how most of us already knew that, but it took a statement from number 10 for the police to actually get it. From today, people living in England will be able to meet up to 6 people in their gardens or parks, as long as social distancing measures are maintained. However, in Scotland, groups of 8 people are allowed to meet outdoors from today, but they've been urged to use their judgment in a bid to halt the spread of the coronavirus. The Prime Minister's official spokesperson said under the coronavirus regulations, police do not have the power to enter a home. They have the power to enter a home separately if they believe serious criminality is taking place, but in terms of the regulations, it does not allow them to enter private properties. I'm sure that members of the public will show common sense and will want to abide by the rules. Police will have the power to enforce the regulations using the proportional and pragmatic approach they've taken so far, they said. What's important to know is that they can use the Coronavirus Act to enter property if they believe that someone inside is infected and they need to be taken to a place to be tested. But the legislation does state that they should take advice from health officials before taking that action. But as we know, the police will simply use one of their BS powers that allow them to breach our rights based solely on their flimsy belief. So you should of course watch out for that, and if approached by the police, ensure you're recording before you start engaging. Now, if you live in Wales, you should know that the new eased rules are different again from that of England and Scotland. Although you too can apparently meet any number of people from another household, it must be in a local area, or at least with travel up to 5 miles only allowed in order to do this. As it stands, police are permitted to still issue fines to people who do not adhere to the rules in Wales. If someone has travelled outside their local area without a reasonable excuse, they could still be issued with a fixed penalty notice. In Wales, the fixed penalty notices are still £60 for a first offence, but double for every offence thereafter, up to £1,920. The Welsh Government has reminded people that gatherings outdoors, which include members of more than 2 households, will still be illegal after Monday, and those involved can be fined or prosecuted. Former Greater Manchester Assistant Chief Constable Stephen Hayward is to attend a 3-day gross misconduct hearing over the death of Anthony Granger, who was shot dead in Cheshire in 2012 by Greater Manchester Police. An incident that has seen a lot of news and something that I've reported on myself recently. The hearing follows an IOPC investigation which began in October 2017, looking at evidence Mr Hayward, now retired, gave during the public inquiry into Mr Granger's death. The IOPC has said that Mr Hayward faces allegations that he breached police professional standards relating to honesty and integrity and performance of duties. In a statement, the IOPC said former Greater Manchester Police Assistant Chief Constable Stephen Hayward will attend a gross misconduct hearing beginning on 1st of June and expected to last 3 days. The hearing follows an IOPC investigation which began in October 2017, looking at evidence given by Assistant Chief Constable Hayward at the Anthony Granger public inquiry while he was a serving officer. Mr Granger was fatally shot by an officer from Greater Manchester Police on Saturday the 3rd of March 2012. Our investigation, completed in May 2018, found there was an indication that he may have committed a criminal offence. Our report, along with supporting evidence, was shared with the Crown Prosecution Service, which decided there was insufficient evidence to authorise charges. We also found that Mr Hayward had a case to answer for gross misconduct. Greater Manchester Police agreed with this in November 2018, and the force has scheduled its hearing for the 1st to the 3rd of June 2012. Mr Hayward faces allegations he breached police professional standards relating to honesty and integrity and performance of duties. The Anthony Granger public inquiry concluded in July 2019. A report written by Judge Thomas Teague QC followed the 14-week public inquiry held in 2017 and was published in July last year. It said that the police operation, codenamed Shire, was based on seriously misleading intelligence and led by command officers who were not occupationally competent. This follows news recently that Mr Granger's partner has been pursuing legal qualifications from the University of Salford in an attempt to help clear Mr Granger's name. 50-year-old John Sondergaard, a firefighter from Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, has been sacked after being found guilty of touching and sexually harassing a teenage apprentice. Sondergaard was dismissed for gross misconduct after the woman complained she was left too scared to go to the unisex toilets on her own due to his sexual harassment. It was alleged that Sondergaard repeatedly asked the 19-year-old for hugs, touched her face and twirled her hair in a series of weird encounters, on one occasion suggesting she would be a lot of fun outside work. He also told the young woman her colleagues were snakes and referred to a female member of staff as a slag. Sondergaard, a firefighter of 20 years, even had the gall to try and sue the fire service for unfair dismissal after claiming they failed to take into his account depression at the time, a line he no doubt picked up off of a police constable. The tribunal was shown a letter from Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service dismissing officer Nicholas Murnock, who told Sondergaard, "I feel your actions throughout demonstrate a lack of the appropriate values to operate within this fire and rescue service. You show disregard for process and acceptable protocol an aggressive disregard for work colleagues, and an acceptance to be able to describe people as slag, whilst also showing a disregard for your own personal safety in relation to breathing apparatus equipment. Your behaviour towards AB, I believe, was totally unacceptable and clearly caused a young employee to be scared and frightened, and so desperate to make it stop that she recorded one of your visits to ensure people believed her. After several incidents, Sondergaard's behaviour is said to have become such a worry to the woman that the next time he entered the office, she set her phone to record. The recording captured him checking rooms to see if she was alone and ranting about his bosses. It ended when Sondergaard walked up behind his apprentice and lifted her up. When he was later confronted with the evidence of the recording, Sondergaard said, "I'm flabbergasted, and at no point did she say she felt uncomfortable. At no point did she say I was being inappropriate. She reminds me of a 16-year-old girl I brought up in a previous relationship. I'm a bit bemused." Maybe somebody should be having a word with that 16-year-old to make sure that she hasn't been a victim of anything. A statement from Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service said this type of behaviour is totally unacceptable in any workplace. Merseyside Fire and Rescue has a code of conduct which gives clear guidance on what is and isn't acceptable. The fact that the member of staff involved felt able to raise her concerns, knowing we would act, is very reassuring. West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, the only person with the power to sack a chief constable, has received backlash after hiring a deputy who has been branded as unfit for the job. Labour Police and Crime Commissioner David Jameson nominated his former assistant Wahid Salim for the senior role last month, praising his work on police recruitment and improving the way fraud is investigated. However, the West Midlands Police Crime Panel, which holds the Police Crime Commissioner to account, is set to reject the appointment after Labour and Conservative members raised concerns over Salim's past behaviour. Concerns about Wahid Salim relate to the time he was barred from holding a position in a public office for 1 year in 2004 after he was found to have leaked commercially sensitive information. Tory leader of Walsall Council, Councillor Mike Bird, who sits on the Police and Crime Panel, said, "I think it was probably very ill judged by the Police and Crime Commissioner to even consider Wahid Salim as a deputy. I am aware that there is great unease among Labour and Conservative members of the panel regarding this applicant, who many consider to be unsuitable for the job. We have history with him in Walsall, and I think Mr Jameson will not get the support of the panel to confirm his appointment." The panel have yet to make a public decision about the appointment, which carries a salary of more than £56,000 a year. His nomination has also been opposed by Jai Singh Sohal, the Conservative candidate for West Midlands Police Crime Commissioner at next year's election. He said Mr Salim was a completely unsuitable choice for deputy, which called Mr Jameson's judgment into question. "What the West Midlands doesn't need is a diversive deputy," he said. "What we do need is a commissioner who is up to the job." Birmingham Northfield MP Gary Sambrook said the decision demonstrates a serious lack of judgment. Mr Salim found it difficult to keep sensitive information secret, and the Police and Crime Commissioner now wants to trust him with confidential information on how we keep our streets safe, serious crime and public protection. It would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. Remember folks, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Just 6 months into 2020, and already figures revealed that 14 judges and magistrates have been disciplined for bad behaviour. Family Court Judge Jeremy Lee was reprimanded for accessing confidential files in a case where he was a prosecution witness. You couldn't make this up, I swear. He spied on files relating to a person he was due to give evidence against without a legitimate reason. Something you or I would have seen ourselves slapped with a significant punishment over if we were to do. Well, Judge Lee, who sits in Nottinghamshire, was issued with formal advice by the Judicial Conduct Investigations Office. They said Judge Lee's actions amounted to misconduct. But he was spared further punishment because of significant personal mitigating circumstances. So even though he could have completely destroyed a case, in fact, I don't know whether he did or not, but I simply can't see how this would be anything less than gross misconduct. Other incidents revealed were from everything from rudeness to ranting on social media, and even falling asleep during a hearing. Although, so far this year, I can't say I've come across any reports of judges being sacked for any of this. More than 200 of approximately 1,200 prison officers in Northern Ireland are said to have had warnings over the past few years, with Ulster Unionist Party MLA Doug Beattie alleging they seem to be being targeted. Doug Beattie obtained a breakdown of written warnings issued in the past 3 years by the Department of Finance, which is responsible in Northern Ireland for employment issues involving officers as they are civil servants. He said in one case, an officer had a warning overturned after it was recognised they were suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Maybe that person should have been identified earlier and not been working in the first place. Of a total of 349 warnings to civil servants, 203 related to prison officers, which Mr Beattie claims is disproportionately high. Official statistics show that they have the highest levels of long-term sick absence in the Northern Ireland civil service. Mr Beattie said they perform an incredibly stressful and dangerous role. Well, I guess smuggling drugs into the prison for the inmates is incredibly stressful and dangerous. Unless, of course, you're banging or being banged by one or several of them. Allegedly. The Metropolitan Police are being accused of surrendering to criminals in lawless areas of London after tensions rose over the tasering of a man a few weeks ago. This is over an incident reported on the channel within the past few weeks where a man was tasered as he jumped a wall, fell and then suffered life-changing injuries as a result, some reports suggesting that he's actually been paralysed. Police chiefs have ordered that non-essential attendance of officers should be avoided in order to maintain the support of residents in an area where the suspect has strong links. However, some police fear that criminals will exploit their absence. By backing off, we are giving freedom of movement to criminals, all because we're scared of offending the community, said one constable. Now, new there then, is there? I mean, you've got a proven track record of doing just that. An internal police document issued after the taser incident, which was reported on by the Mail on Sunday, said the incident has resulted in increased tensions between the local community and police. For this reason, please be mindful when patrolling in areas where the subject has links. Local engagement is encouraged and any other proactive, non-essential police attendance should be avoided. Said it before, I'll say it again. Numbers make a difference. The incident is being investigated by the Independent Office for Police Conduct. A tactical support group officer, a TSG constable, is facing a criminal charge of grievous bodily harm for wrongly discharging his taser at disciplinary charge of gross misconduct. He has currently been placed on restricted duties. A Met spokesperson said police were still responding to reports of crimes in the area and that ongoing investigations were not being affected. Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, in his outers and in-betweeners, now for a bit of bad news. I'm afraid it appears that the government is making sex illegal. Well, the words used are sex in your house with someone from outside of your house is set to become illegal as of today. So you best head down to those dogging hotspots, as both people would be able to be prosecuted under the new legislation amendments which are introduced today, preventing people from socialising or gathering with one person from outside of their household in a private space. I was looking up the amendments last night, which were not official at the time, which were not officially at the time enforceable, but are very distressing and, in my opinion, should be resisted at all costs. In fact, this is yet another amendment that goes completely against our human rights, and our human rights are important enough for us all to fight back. The third amendment to Regulation 7 of the Health Protection Coronavirus Restrictions England Regulations 2020 states that during the emergency period, unless paragraph 2 applies, no person may participate in a gathering which takes place in a public or private place, either outdoors and consists of more than 6 persons, or indoors and consists of 2 or more persons, meaning that unless any of the following apply, then you're not allowed anyone in your home, as 2 or more people would constitute an infringement of these regulations. Moving on, paragraph 2 gives the exemptions to the rule and says, this paragraph applies where all the persons in the gathering are members of the same household. The person is attending a funeral as a member of the deceased person's household, a close family member of the deceased person, or if no one within paragraph 1 or 2 is attending, a friend of the deceased person. C. The person concerned is an elite athlete, the coach of an elite athlete, or in the case of an elite athlete under the age of 18, the parent of an elite athlete, and the gathering is necessary for training or competition. D. The gathering is reasonably necessary for work purposes or for the provision of voluntary or charitable services. Now you could get away with this, as it could be a pity shag, which is very charitable of the person offering the services, but also prostitution could be deemed as legal if you film it with a view to publishing it. Then you're paying for the role in your video and it's then classed as work. To facilitate a house move, to provide care or assistance to a vulnerable person, including relevant personal care, within the meaning of paragraph 7.3b of Schedule 4 to the Safeguarding of Vulnerable Groups Act 2006, to provide emergency assistance, for the purposes of early years childcare provided by a person registered on the Early Years Register under Part 3 of the Child Care Act 2006, to enable one or more persons in the gathering to avoid injury or illness, or to escape a risk of harm, to continue existing arrangements for access to and contact between parents and children, where the children do not live in the same household as their parents or one of their parents. The person concerned is fulfilling a legal obligation or participating in legal proceedings. The gathering takes place at an educational facility and is reasonably necessary for the purposes of education. Now, Section 3 of the same amendment defines what this means, in that for the purposes of this regulation, there is a gathering when 2 or more people are present together in the same place in order to engage in any form of social interaction with each other or to undertake any other activity with each other, i.e. sex. Or a place is indoors if it would be considered to be enclosed or substantially enclosed for the purposes of Section 2 of the Health Act 2006 under the Smoke-Free Premises and Enforcement Regulations 2006. For example, a pub, restaurant or somewhere else deemed as a public place by the fact you can't smoke there. So the new legislation explicitly bans being inside the house in a gathering of more than one person from another household without a reasonable excuse. Writing on Twitter, Adam Wagner, a human rights barrister at Doty Street, said that the police will no longer have powers to challenge the public carrying out activities outside of the home. He said, to be clear, from tomorrow, the police can no longer get involved with why you are outside of the place you are living. No more power to direct people back home, no more power to fine for leaving or being outside of the home without reasonable excuse. But the thing is, there is still no lawful powers of police to enter your property under the regulations to find out if you are knocking boots or not, unless it's a commercial property. But with so many emerging grasses in our communities, you should still be cautious and keep your promiscuous activities to outside places like the local dogging spots. Now, there are more changes, but I'll not go through them all here as most of them won't matter to most of you, but we'll link to the full legislation in the description. A former doctor from the Broughton Park area of Salford has been arrested. Currently, the name of the former doctor seems to be being withheld at the time of this report, but it's said that Greater Manchester Police detectives are investigating historic claims into the alleged abuse, which is said to have spanned over a number of years, but only just reported. The woman claimant claims she was sexually assaulted a number of times during routine doctor's appointments. The woman is being supported by specialist police while the allegations are being investigated. The former doctor is said to still be in custody, and Greater Manchester Police Detective Inspector Thomas Willis said that any sexual assault is deeply traumatising for any victim, and I want to reiterate Greater Manchester Police's firm commitment to investigating reports thoroughly. We have a team of specialist officers supporting the woman through this distressing time, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank her for coming forward and showing true bravery. If anyone holds information that they think could help with our inquiries, I would plead you to please come forward. And to finish today's report, I'd want to say huge respect to those law enforcement officers in the USA who downed batons and shields over the weekend in order to join in the protests over the unlawful killing of George Floyd. We want to be with you all. For real, I took my helmet off, laid the batons down. I want to make this a parade, not a protest, Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson said, and was seen telling protesters in Flint, Michigan, before he joined the assembled crowd to march. Police in Camden, New Jersey helped carry a banner reading "Standing in Solidarity" and seemed to join in with the crowd chanting "No justice, no peace." In Santa Cruz, California, Police Chief Andy Mills took a knee with protesters in the pose made famous by Colin Kaepernick, with the department tweeting it was in memory of George Floyd and bringing attention to police violence against black people. 2 Kansas City, Missouri police officers, one white man, one black man, were photographed holding aloft a sign reading "End Police Brutality." In Fargo, North Dakota, an officer was seen clasping hands with protest organisers while holding up a sign reading "We are one race, the human race." Officers in Ferguson, Missouri participated in a 9.5-minute kneel in Floyd's memory, with cheers erupting from the crowd. It seems that the US police are really showing our lot up for the bunch of cunts they are, because you certainly wouldn't catch any of ours doing the same. Very big thank you to channel Patreon supporters. Of course, your support is always truly appreciated. And that's all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.